As Nintendo fans, we all know that the company is constantly pushing the boundaries of what's possible in gaming, and with the success of the Switch, we can't wait to see what they have in store for us next. From improved hardware to new features, today we'll be exploring all the exciting things that we want to see from the next Nintendo console. Welcome to the Switch Clicks podcast, episode 123, recorded on February 14th, 2023. My name's Dakota, and today I'm joined by Nathan.
Hello.
It always seems like when it's just us, we always talk about Nintendo, but...
Yeah, common interest, and we just so happen to be Nintendo fans.
So leading up to last week's Direct, there was a lot of talk about if basically this was the last year that we're going to have the Nintendo Switch, or at least this kind of Nintendo Switch. Now, I think that talk just immediately broke, and nobody's talking about that now once that Direct came out. But we still kind of want to talk about it because it's really around the corner, I'd say in the next 3 years or so at least.
We're reaching that age where those who wanted a Switch already bought one, and the sales are going to start slowing down, and Nintendo's going to be running out of games for this console too. So might as well hop on the train a little earlier than usual and talk about this.
And 7 years is about how long the modern console will survive until it gets replaced. So we're just coming up to that. And we have made a list of features, different things we want in the next console. Nathan, you can go first with the first one.
Okay, first and foremost, probably the most obvious one that everyone's been asking for. Backwards compatibility. Please. But it's not even just for the games, but also the controllers themselves. I know when I bought a Wii U, I was actually pretty happy that I was able to use all my Wii remotes and all these accessories. And I hope that Nintendo would do something similar in the case of the Switch, where you can just reuse your Switch controllers, because they're all Bluetooth, so it shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah, and the fact that the Nintendo Switch has such a massive library of games now, I don't think it's a good idea to even just throw that away for the next console. Even with Tears of the Kingdom around the corner, if we get another console within a year and it's not backwards compatible, you just killed the sales of any future games.
Yeah, and that generation is going to die.
The controllers is an interesting thing because, yeah, you made the point where you can use the Wii controllers on the Wii U, but that was almost a detriment to the Wii U, kinda, where people didn't know if the gamepad was a new thing or just an attachment.
That is very true. It did kind of hurt the Wii U's marketing, and I guess if you were to look at the Switch, people would be like, well, the Switch, if this was the case for Nintendo's next console, the Joy-Cons they actually just look like a controller at this point. They don't look like something that's a peripheral, or how do I describe it? I think people would see this as an actual new console because Nintendo's not going to pull off this whole Wii U thing and primarily market the old controllers. Just look at what Sony did with the PS5. I don't believe there was any kind of DualShock 4 shown in any of the marketing there. They just kind of said it works, but they didn't really push the whole controller thing.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, if Nintendo really markets themselves correctly, either they can name this next console, they probably won't name it the new Nintendo Switch. That seems like a nightmare.
Yeah, that would.
But the Nintendo Switch 2 doesn't sound right either.
Super Nintendo Switch.
That's probably the best name, honestly.
That'd be the best homage to, obviously the SNES.
It's also just good marketing.
Yeah,
Super Switch.
You see, there's something that's actually better than the Switch. People would actually be inclined to buy this thing because they know there's things on there that they can't get on the regular Switch.
Yeah, and if it's a significant jump in hardware, then yeah, it will be much more obvious.
Yeah. Oh, I almost forgot one other reason why they should keep backwards compatible controllers. It's because some Switch games need Joy-Cons.
That is true. 1-2 Switch.
Super Mario Party.
Oh yeah, Super Mario Party, and then you got Nintendo Switch Sports. Which, if you play Nintendo Switch Sports on a console that isn't a Nintendo Switch, it's very weird.
You're not gonna like it. Uh, and I guess there's also that wide selection of games where even the optional motion controls are nice to have as an option. Throwing them
Yeah,
out completely, it kind of flips the game upside down. Like if you look at Captain Toad, Super Mario Galaxy, Skyward Sword, all of those kind of work better with their motion control counterparts. Even though the regular controller option still like appears.
yeah. I can't see Nintendo throwing away motion controls after all these years. They've refined them
Yeah,
so much from the Wii U era or the Wii era.
the only thing they need is an IR sensor for that to make it uh, less scary.
The next thing we have is to keep the physical option, keep the option
Dakota,
for physical games.
Dakota, that's
Um,
your favorite. That's also my favorite.
yeah, I
Uh,
can't see Nintendo ever offering a digital only console.
yeah,
I also don't think the digital only Xbox or the digital only PS5 sold any better than the regular version. Yes, the companies are trying to push us towards that so they can have more of a profit and more of the cut, but I just don't see it happening, honestly.
at the same time, I think it's kind of like it's kind of like a double-edged sword for the game publishers too. It's like they have to pay so much money for manufacturing this, but at the same time, those manufacturing costs are the reason why the games are so freaking expensive.
The only thing I
And
can see is they maybe make the Nintendo Switch Lite digital only. That's the only thing I
yeah,
can see.
yeah, I'd imagine like an even cheaper model of like the Switch Lite or something in that case, and then just go full digital. Like I know Sony did that with their PSP at least once. Oh, and I guess with the physical parts, backwards compatibility would be nice too. Think it's us. I don't think having like digital only backwards compatibility is necessarily a good idea. Um, and I historically Nintendo has been able to do that with both the 3DS and Wii U. Um, but they just kind of threw out the opportunity because it was either too expensive or apparently it didn't meet their standards or something. Um, like the Game Boy Advance, for example, it could like the 3DS could actually run Game Boy Advance games. It just didn't have the slot, so they had to go digital. For some reason, they decided not to do that, which I don't know why. And you could say the same thing about GameCube games on the Wii U. They could have done that so easily, but I don't know. It'd be nice if they had the physical option available, so that Nintendo would kind of be a little more obligated to do it in that sense.
I guess speaking of obligation, technically, is the next thing on our wish list is continued legacy content support, which
Yes.
basically means all of the Nintendo Switch Online games that they've built up, that entire library of, uh, uh, why did I just blank on the names of the consoles? NES,
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 SNES, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Sega Genesis, and N64, and later
yes,
any future consoles that come by.
yeah, which I doubt they're going to go past that, honestly. I don't see GameCube coming around anytime soon,
Yes.
but keeping all that content and moving it to the next, and
Yeah.
probably just keeping the Nintendo Switch Online branding alive
Mhm.
and that entire system. I don't see them throwing that away either. Because
That
people
would
got
be.
pretty mad when they were
Yeah.
confused on whether the virtual console was coming back or not.
It scares and the whole thing about subscription services ending scares a lot of people too, especially since we've actually witnessed that happen very recently. Thankfully, when that in that case everyone got refunded, but the whole idea that if Nintendo shuts this down, there's going to be a lot of backlash from that, and you're obviously going to lose all your save data unless Nintendo gives an option to move that over. Um, so I'm hoping that whatever they built up now, it's definitely gonna go past the Switch and into this next console.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what PlayStation did or Sony did with the PlayStation Plus subscription. I think
Hmm.
recently they're removing their premium collection or whatever you call it. Yeah, for me it wasn't horrible because I did add most of those to my library before it did
Yeah.
shut down, but
Hmm.
it was mainly for because it was a new console and it didn't have much to use. They just gave those games away so you can play it on your new console, which works. The next few here are all hardware related because that's the thing that people get excited about.
I think this was the biggest disappointment from the Switch that a lot of people had, especially when people were comparing it to a certain handheld console from the previous generation. It's mobile data support or 5G support. It's not uncommon for like handheld consoles to just completely ignore like data usage because one, you could just hotspot to your phone and whatnot, but as we know already, that's a terrible idea, no matter how hard you try. But the thing is, the PS Vita supported mobile data, which was which was one of the things that Sony actually did so much better than Nintendo, because none of Nintendo's consoles actually had that option, and the difference between like tethering your hotspot and actually having that hotspot there is night and day.
I don't really know how it worked with the PS Vita, but I would have thought that this is pretty hard to do unless it would be eSIM only, right?
See,
There's a whole ecosystem you have to build for a new Switch, and in Canada here, we
oh
basically
my
only have two or three
gosh.
options. So you'd have to get
Oh,
Rogers and Bell, and I don't know what the other one is, TELUS, I think? No, I don't know.
I'm not even gonna
Um,
bother that.
yeah, you'd have to get those guys on board to offer a new plan or something.
That is
It's
very
very
true.
odd. So there's a lot of
Yeah,
complications, I think.
it's a nice thing to have, but I mean, I suppose that's the whole point about having phones and mobile hotspots.
Yeah,
Um,
I think Nintendo probably thought that through, and they're like, wait, everybody holds a phone. They probably already have data on their phone, therefore they have a mobile hotspot. But not everybody has the
that's
amount of gigs that you need.
exactly that's that's enough to hold them by, but there does come a bit of a how do I say this, a sacrifice when they choose if they choose to like not implement any mobile data on this next console. But at the same time, like you said, some countries have terrible mobile data environments where some plans are overly expensive. Um, and also at the same time, not everyone actually has the money to spend for that expensive of an internet plan. Um, yeah, it can really go any way with this. Um, it's not really a necessity now that I think about it.
Yeah, actually. Like I've never needed internet on a road trip.
Yeah.
If I knew I was going on a road trip, I would update my games before I go. And if
Hmm.
I didn't update my games before I go, I didn't matter because it was probably a single player game because I knew I didn't have any internet. I'm not
Exactly.
playing Splatoon on a road trip.
Exactly. Like you're never going to be playing an online game 24/7 unless for some reason you had an obligation to. But
Yeah.
like why would you ever want to try to do that?
I think the next thing is probably the biggest thing. Just generally stronger hardware.
Yeah.
I believe at the release of the Nintendo Switch, the hardware was, I think, 2 or 3 years old, if I can remember
Yes.
correctly.
Yes. The chip that they used came from 2015.
Yikes.
Yeah, so they were using they're obviously gambling with the technology at the time. They didn't want to go off with the phone technology, like, the complete mobile technology. They wanted to go like the high end route, but then they they ended up using something that was a little on the older side. And looking back at it now, that has definitely aged a lot.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, it probably saved them a lot of money in production
Yeah.
costs. Probably, I would have to spend hundreds of dollars in production costs per console, honestly.
Yeah.
But now, recently, there's been rumors that that Nvidia is working with Nintendo again on a new custom chip, I think, called the Nvidia Tegra 239.
Yeah.
Not that I know what that means, but it's
Just-
a new chip, which means probably a better chip.
yeah, better chip. I'm not sure what else you can say about this one. It's just a better chipset. um I do know people were saying like the NVIDIA like working with NVIDIA means that they should be able to eventually get like DLSS, a DLSS upscaling and whatnot. I don't know the technology behind it, but I
Yeah.
will have to say that regardless of depending on what we see from NVIDIA, this would still be considered a modern, current day standard because this thing hasn't released yet. Aside from that, what we're really grasping at is straws here. Um, Better hardware is a given. Just how far they'll go is a really big question, and I hope it's good enough that it be ahead of mobile devices because um, it kind of scares me how some people are still choosing mobile devices for gaming over the Switch, even though the Switch has much better controls, with the actual physical controller.
Yeah.
So if Nintendo were to go for better hardware, they better consider keeping up with the competition because as much as I hate to admit it, um, mobile companies are actually becoming real companies.
Yeah, and there's always money in that because of the convenience of a phone. So,
Exactly. It's like how do you convince
um,
people to go buy something that's almost the same as a phone but only for gaming?
yeah. And I wonder, I kind of already have my opinion, but I'm kind of wondering what your opinion is. Would you rather them focus on frames to get up to a consistent 60 or potentially 120, or would you want them just to be consistent, maybe 1080 or 4K? Which one would you prefer?
Um, See, that's a little tough there. Um,
I think the graphics, all the graphics would stay the same, or not to stay
yeah,
the same. They would be generally upgraded. You can see farther in Pokemon.
yeah.
You don't have to render 2D images in Breath of the Wild, stuff like
I
that.
think, yeah, as a personal stance, I would definitely prefer them to improve frame rates or at least the refresh rate on the screen so that it gives developers a little more freedom. But the problem with that is, at least in my personal experience, trying to increase the frame rate is so much more difficult than simply increasing the resolution. Um,
Yeah, that is
like you can
true.
have a 4K 30 game easy peasy, but you can't have like a 60 1080 game like that and not expect your phone to stay cool the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I play Splatoon 3. That's 1080p, 60 frames, and that is frying my Switch. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, Genshin Impact on my phone. I have an S10, a Galaxy S10 for reference.
Oh yeah,
As far as I tried lowering the settings down to minimum, and even changing it from 30 to 60 still causes it to heat up a bit.
yeah,
Which,
that's
yeah,
what's
it's
brutal.
so trying to. I guess performance is really a really tough thing to do, unless so they somehow invent some new type of cooling that actually helps it. But
Water cooling. Replace
water
the water
cooling,
in your Switch every 2 months.
yeah, exactly. They need to heavily invest in cooling technology if they wanted to do that. Otherwise, it's honestly really hard to get frame rates. I'm fine with hitting 30. Just please make it a stable 30.
I think I'd
Maybe
actually
45.
prefer having a 1080p 60 frames. If you can
Yeah.
get instantly consistent that frame rate and no matter what is on screen,
Mhm.
if I'm playing Splatoon 3 on tricolor and I'm in the middle of the battle, I should not be lowering frames.
I think the next one here on our list here is going a bit back on controllers here. Can we get better joysticks and maybe bring back the analog triggers?
Yeah, I think recently there's a supplier that is like remaking joysticks, and you can buy
Mhm.
them and you can install them into your Joy Cons, and they're just I don't know what they did differently, but they just last longer.
It could just be the internal design and how it probably gives the contacts more space, something that
Yeah,
doesn't damage them.
of course, we just want to avoid Joy-Con drift. That is
Yeah,
mainly the problem. And I'm
yeah,
curious, how many pairs of Joy-Cons do you own, and how many of them do you know that has Joy-Con drift?
yeah. So this would be a good question for all of you. As for myself, I only have two pairs. Um, Only one of them has drifted so far. One pair has drifted so far, and that one was a 2018, 2017 model. I
Hmm.
gave it into Nintendo for free, got a replacement, and ever since then, neither of my Joy-Con pairs have drifted.
Yeah, I've not sent in any of my Joy-Cons. I have sent in my Pro Controller twice. Not for Joy-Con drift. I think it was for something else. I don't even remember what it was. I think it was
Ew.
my right trigger was acting up twice. But
Ooh.
as for my Joy-Cons, I have three pairs. I have the
Yeah.
gray pair, the red and blue pair, and the best pair ever, the purple and orange ones. My purple and orange ones are my main ones that I use nowadays.
Okay.
And those have not acted up at all yet, which is really nice. But
That is interesting.
um, I think I bought those just when they released, which was I think close to the beginning of the pandemic. So realistically, my Switch really hasn't moved since then.
Hmm.
As for the other two, my gray Joy-Cons are pretty much busted. I can still use them when people come over, but I lost the like rubber part of the right gray Joy-Con, so it's just like a piece of
Uh,
plastic.
uh, all
And then my
right.
left Joy-Con of the blue and red pair has a lot of problems. Like when I'm playing Mario Kart, we're like, who's messing with the menus? And nobody is. But
Hmm.
it's always the blue Joy-Con that's having the problem.
I
So
guess food for thought. Better materials used to make it more durable.
yeah, I guess a 50% isn't horrible, but also 50% is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Half and half. That's still a little dangerous there.
Yeah.
Um. Yeah. I just hope it's a little more consistent, less fragile.
Yeah, and the analog triggers, that was a big complaint when um, the console initially came out. I haven't seen many complaints nowadays, but I also don't think Nintendo really needs to worry about that since there's a lot of third-party options nowadays, even if a game has it
Yeah.
coded in.
I mean, yeah, and plus there kind of really isn't much else that Nintendo could experiment with analog triggers. Like I know earlier GameCube games used them, but that later Nintendo decided just to screw off with that and never use them again. Um, so it just kind of goes to show what kind of games Nintendo is interested in making.
Yeah.
They don't really need it.
The last thing in our hardware is something that I kind of want is a bezel-less screen design. Um, Kind of akin to what I think Samsung does with their phones, where there's barely any bezel, maybe like a
Every
millimeter.
Yeah, every mobile manufacturer, they're trying to get like at least the high end ones. They're trying to minimize that size as much as possible and kind of make it look like it's just a single screen. Samsung's done it the best so far, I think. With like the really unnoticeable tiny bezel around their camera, but everywhere else is just plain screen. I'm hoping Nintendo kind of looks after that sort of like level of interest and hopefully gives us something a little better than the Switch OLED.
Yeah, and some people might be asking, well, they did that with the Switch OLED. No, they did not. Yes, they made the screen bigger. Yes, it looks better. Uh, but there's still a solid amount of black space between the screen and the black kind of plastic of the
Yeah,
chassis. So
they're not quite there yet. They're almost there, but we still got some space left.
yeah, and maybe speaking of the chassis, I would kind of like a little bit more premium looking chassis, less of
Yeah.
the plastic toy like, not toy like, it's still a little bit premium,
Mhm.
but I kind of like the look of like, not shiny like a Samsung phone. Maybe glass on the back would be pretty cool, like Apple.
Glass or ceramic.
Yeah, just a more premium looking one.
Yeah, that would be very nice to have. I mean, I guess plastic slash metallic was okay. Um, but yeah, it depends.
Yeah. These next three are all to do with software. The last one being kind of a fan favorite. First one is more customization. Of course, now everybody should know I love customization. I get on the current Switch, I get the choice between white and black, and that is not great. And it's weird that Nintendo decided, yeah, we're gonna make some profile pictures for Nintendo Switch Online and not themes.
Don't get
And
me
I
started about that one.
yeah, I believe there was a leak somewhere that they originally were working on a bunch of them, and then they scrapped all the colors,
What?
which was weird. You might be able to look it up. I think there was either red, blue, and a different type of white, but that's all I can remember. But of course, we want that.
Maybe they're having UI issues.
I don't see why they would have UI issues, honestly. It's one color. I can do it in Photoshop.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
The other thing people want is like music for the store. I'm indifferent to that. I don't usually have my headphones in while I'm browsing the eShop. Not that I browse the eShop too much.
I'd rather they just improve the eShop in general.
They did some decent upgrades with the filtering system. But they still have the problem.
Searches.
Yeah, they still have the problem of this is the new games tab, and whatever's at the bottom or whatever is released after 2 days, you're never going to look at again.
It's also very slow.
Yeah, you have to externally find games instead of inside the eShop. Next one is removing friend codes. I think we can all agree that friend codes is an old system, and they should just remove it. They should just go the Discord route.
It's even more ironic because they already removed the friend code thing on the Wii U and the 3DS.
Yeah, exactly.
So Nintendo already knows.
Yeah, and Splatoon already has kind of that system with the usernames and the different number codes. Not that they're using it for anything other than, I assume, reporting and banning.
Yeah, pretty much. And, custom usernames without having to change it globally.
And the last thing I have here is the return of Street Pass. Because that was awesome. I think I remember I went to New York for like a week one time, and this was before the Switch, and I decided I knew that you could get a lot of Street Pass people at the time. So while I was walking around New York, I kept my 3DS on the entire day, and I probably got hundreds and hundreds of people on my Street Pass, including, I don't remember which me you get for visiting the Nintendo store. It's either Reggie or Miyamoto.
Oh.
Which was pretty cool.
Yeah. Something to incentivize people to go around with the console.
Yeah. Just a more community-based. I think it might be a little bit harder considering like the 3DS had the clamshell design, so you could turn off the screens and keep the screen safe while it is off or in sleep mode. But the Switch doesn't have that capability. So if anything, you would have to activate Street Pass mode, I would assume by the main menu, or maybe the Nintendo Switch Online menu. And then you would be on Street Pass mode. Maybe I don't know there's no like indicator on the console.
Like, what do you mean? Like, what kind of indicator?
Like there was a little on the 3DS. There was a little light on the top left or right of the console, and when you got a Street Pass, it would turn green instead of the regular, I think, blue.
The Switch technically has it, but they didn't really work too much on it. It was that blue notification light on the home button.
Oh yeah, the home button glows. I completely forgot about that.
They never used it. That's why.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I guess we can use that
for
then.
like fitness boxing or Ring Fit Adventure or something, and they stopped using it.
Honestly, I might do a video on Street Pass because it was such a cool concept.
That's a really good idea.
Thank you for joining us and discussing the next Nintendo console. We'd love it if you could follow us on Twitter and listen to future episodes on Spotify and iTunes. Join our community Discord server to continue today's discussion. And we'll see you next time on the Switch Clicks podcast.